Okay, let's try this one and see if it's going to happen. Okay, the good news is I'm here. I'm ready to have a party. Ah, thank goodness somebody found us. Well, hi everybody. Let me know if you can hear me. I'm hoping that other people will find this here. I was supposed to be doing this as my level 3 live chat. Beth is here. That's great. Well, we're going to have a bunch of extra people. You're all getting a treat this time because this is actually generally the chat for my level 3 membership. And I've got to be honest with you, we've been having some trouble with the fact that we're doing this on the regular channel and not the live channel. And because of that, we're not able to send notifications out in advance. And we've had some trouble like tonight linking the live feed to the members. So we're probably going to make some revisions in the next few weeks and make it so that we're able to do this as a benefit, probably on the other channel, and change the level 3 over to the live channel. YouTube is doing this and it's been perpetual. It's been 2 years that this has been in beta testing for members, and it's clear that they're not going to quickly solve these problems that are causing us to have trouble linking live video to the right place, getting members involved. So I am glad to see all of you folks. I know some of you aren't level 3, but welcome anyway. We want you to be part of the chat. The way that the level 3 member chats work each month, and I think the level 3 is $1.99 more than the level 2, so I think it's $5.99 a month. But this is the main perk is that we get to have live chat together, and the members are the ones who suggest the topics. So everything that we're going to talk about tonight is member driven. So my level 3 members have been giving me information for the past few weeks about how things that they would be interested in having as topics. We like to talk about the market for antiques and vintage and what's happening in it, and we like to talk about things that people are experiencing both as collectors and as resellers. This is not just a reseller blog. Some of the questions that we get, a lot of the folks are reselling, but we also are getting a lot of questions about other stuff too. So I'm very glad that you all have found me. Thank you very much to the level 3 members who support this and have made this possible this evening. We really appreciate your support that makes this happen. And we are very glad to address your questions and issues. And we are going to do that now. So let's get started. I will talk a little bit towards the end about the thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, which is how we can all up our game both as collectors and as resellers, and why that's important to do. But I'm going to start with a bunch of questions that were posed by my level 3 members and who wanted to know some different things. And I'm going to start with, I think I'm going to start with Beth Kuchera because, like she said, you've had a long day. And her comment was, isn't there some concern that with a whole lot of live sales and YouTube and stuff going on all the time, isn't there some concern about burnout, about people becoming OCD and manic, the people who are creating this content? And I would say that yes, Beth, that is a very valid concern. Like you said, I've had a long day. I'm in the middle of doing 5 live sales in 3 days. I don't generally do any live sales, so it's sort of a little learning curve every time we come back. For the folks who do them all the time, I think that the thing is that, we love putting things in collectors' hands. I'm going to have a live sale tomorrow at noon, and for example, I have this wonderful Black Americana nodder. This is a great piece. It's an old piece. It's actually not a particularly stereotyped piece, and it's something really cool. Well, this is the kind of thing, you put it up in a live sale and somebody sells it and you get a good price and you start getting excited. And pretty soon you want to have live sales all the time because you get the joy and enthusiasm of the person who is a collector getting this thing, and everybody gets to watch it happen, and it's the fun of being at an auction. It's all those things. So you can see where it becomes addicting. But if you notice, most auctioneers have one auction a month or one a week. They don't do it night after night after day because there's only so much you can do, number one, if you want to keep your quality level up, and number two, if you want to keep your sanity. Because when we're selling, you say, oh, I want to get something real quickly. Sarah, you haven't missed a whole lot. It took me a long time to figure out how to hook this up. I'm sorry that we had to do it this way. We've got a lot of folks who are not our regular members. The topics are all level 3 member driven. And so at least we're going to stick to that. But I had to just get this going. This is the only way I could figure out to do it. Zeno is off tonight. So I'm going to go get something really quickly I want to show. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that, but a little show and tell is always good. Okay, so these are sterling rims around very nice Lenox pieces, for example. And this is the kind of thing, this is the blue mark before 1953 with this nice Ming tree design. And the rims are sterling because back then it didn't cost a whole lot extra to put a sterling rim on. And the effect was really neat. Well, this is the kind of thing that, again, you get into a live sale and people get excited because they haven't seen these before and they bid them up, and all of a sudden, you get running for everything. The thing is that after a live sale, while you folks are getting the fun things that you want to collect, we have a big pile of packing to do. So, if you end up having live sales all the time, you end up just never leaving the shipping room, and it can be a real issue. So I think what Beth was getting at is, where is the balance point? And I think that's maybe the bigger issue in general. Where is the balance between what I'm doing in my antique and vintage world if I'm a reseller, or even as a collector? With a collector, it's easier. Your balance is, I have a budget for this much, and when I've spent it, then I have to wait until I have a budget for more. With a seller, it's easy to really get addicted to the idea of just always selling, always selling, always selling. But you need to have a more well-rounded life, and you also need time for scholarship, to research the items, to look for new things, to look for different things. And I'm going to talk about that later when we talk about upping our game in the collecting realm. And yes, Beth, I agree, self-care is essential. And, live sales do take a lot of time that the viewers don't necessarily see, but I think it's all right. It's time well spent. And yes, I do have the level 3 folks do email the questions and topics ahead of time. And I was telling people, this is a good example. We sometimes just have logistical problems. We're probably going to switch the way that we do this in the future, so that the members will be able, the level 3 members will be able to chat and give input to topics, but everybody will be able to see the show on the other channel. But we'll get to that and we'll notify you all when we do it. I had a couple of other questions I thought were really good, actually several, so let's talk about those. I wanted to address this one because this is something that that people who are collectors run into just as well. If you're going to a lot of estate sales, garage sales, even at some thrift stores, they don't always clean this stuff before they put it out. And a viewer asked, what is this sticky brown residue that I am finding all over things when I go to estate sales or certain thrift stores and shops where they don't really clean very well? And I will show an example of that. I'm going to be with Heidi, who I see in the chat. Hi, Heidi, of Rosie's Auction House. And you'll be able to see it here on my channel or go to her channel tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to simulcast and do a live sale and a wrap up of the Fenton convention. Well, when I found this bell, I knew I was going to the convention. I didn't end up getting to put it out at the convention because it was so covered with sticky stuff. It was a little brown, and you want to be really careful with the paint that you don't, you know, scrape too hard. And with satin glass, you have to be careful. And so I ended up spraying it several times with simple green because it was the nicest, most environmentally friendly thing I could think of. And finally, all of that stain, which was there because this was kept in the kitchen and it was near the stove. That is some of what you see. Some of what you see when you're at an estate sale that is brown and sticky on things is because most people, the majority of people in this country were smokers up until about 1980. And so most houses have a film of old tobacco residue, especially if you get into older estates. We had an estate in Port Orchard, Washington. It was wonderful. It was full of wonderful vintage fashion. The entire family chain smoked. Everything smelled of smoke. And we hardly sold any of it because there was no way to wash everything and put it back before the sale. Shayna says sticky could be grease. It could be animal waste. It could be dust. It could be many different things. And she is right. It could be all of those things. I do recommend take a little hand sanitizer with you if you're not a natural wearer of gloves when you're going hunting in these places. Kitchen grease is a big problem. I had a very nice piece of carnival glass, a green one, that I bought, and it had a lot of grease because it was on the refrigerator next to the stove vent in this house. I could not get it off without taking off some of the iridized finish. So it basically ruined the piece. So when you're out there shopping, be aware. If it's something like a piece of glass or a piece of pottery or something that you can easily put in the dishwasher or you can soak, fine, no problem. A lot of people have old hints from Heloise or family recipes of how they can clean smoke smells and dirt out of clothes safely and old quilts and things. And if you are into those things and I would say, get an old one you don't care about and practice a little. If you start feeling good at it, then you may have an advantage over other collectors or resellers going into an estate sale. You may be able to buy things that they can't. I turn a lot of stuff down because I don't think I can clean it properly. So that is the, and yes, nicotine waste. Yes, that is definitely another one. And simple green is great because it doesn't take up the paint exactly. One reason I don't sell clothes or linens, my house is musty. A lot of houses are musty, and that is where that comes from too. Also, sometimes dust just layers up over years, and just from that you can get aging. I've got a suitcase that Danny, the niche lady, wants. The sides are in beautiful shape. It's got this great flower power design. The top was sitting between other suitcases for 40 years in a basement. It's darker than the rest of the piece. That probably can't be changed. Dawn does work wonders. That is absolutely true. And the reason Dawn works wonders is, strangely enough, it has some sort of a petrochemical base, but that actually helps take the nasty stuff off. So not sure how that works. I'm not a chemist. My grandmother was a chemist. She was very smart in that way. I did not get that brain. So the big question is, before you buy it, ask yourself, can I clean this? Do I think I can safely clean this? The other thing is, Windex can be terrible on things. People will buy ruby flash glass and see the film on it, and they'll spray it with Windex, and then they wipe it and the ruby flash comes off because it was fired on at a very low temperature. So it's really just on the glass. It's not in the glass. It's not cooked in. An ozone machine, yes, Mary Lee, that is absolutely a great idea. We discovered the ozone machine because, actually, Zeno recommended that to me because he had worked on a boat that went to Alaska for cruises, and they had to use one on that because boats get musty inside. And so he knew about the ozonator, and that was the only way we were able to have that estate sale because the house smelled so bad and you couldn't get it out. If flash isn't clean, I won't buy it. I think that's a pretty smart way of thinking about it, actually. And yes, cleaning does take a lot of time. So this is something. Now, again, if you're a serious collector and you're buying something for yourself, take the time because you can get a nice deal on some things that way. So that is what the sticky stuff that you're seeing on everything is, and that's why there's not necessarily one good answer for how to deal with it. Andrea also said that she is new in a mall, and she wanted a few tips for mall newbies. And I thought, well, gosh, I think some of our collectors out here in the chat, if you have ideas about what you like and what you see in booths and what attracts you to one over the other, put that in the chat, because I think that could be useful for some of our real world resellers, especially some of the folks new to the antique malls and the booths and the vendor malls, because it gives perspective on what you're looking for when you go in. But I'll give a few tips based on my experience. First of all, if you're new to a mall, I would say obviously you're going to have some merchandise because that's why you went ahead and took a mall space. So look around though, see what else is in the mall. See, first of all, and yes, be sure you have plenty of items to sell. Now that sounds funny, like, oh gosh, how could we not have enough? Look how much everybody's got. Oh, I've collected for years. Over and over, when I would open a new mall and I would have dealers move in, I would say, how many boxes are you bringing? If they said, I'm bringing 5 boxes for this showcase, I would say, good, now go home and get 5 more. And they'd say, oh no, this is a lot of stuff. And they'd put it in and it would just vanish in this big case. And they'd say, you're right, I have to go get 5 more. It will take more merchandise initially than you think it will. But at the same time, you want to decide what merchandise you're bringing. Beth's got a great point. Rework your booth as often as you can. I have a really hard time with that because I travel so much. I'm going to Florida next week. I'm like 3 months overdue. My sales were great. I think I sold all my good stuff. Who knows if I'm selling anything now? And I'm sure that some of my viewers who went saying, oh, we're going to see his neat booth, were like, what's wrong with him? He doesn't have anything in here, or it's in a big pile. That's what happens if you don't work your booth. So definitely go in as often as you can within reason. Weekly, at least monthly, dust and rearrange and make things look different. As far as if you're new and looking for a mall, oh, these are great. Bright colors draw the eyes. And I agree about reproductions. If you are a new seller, if you're in a vendor mall where it's old, new, and in between, well, that may be different. But if you're selling in an antique and vintage mall, antique and vintage people do not like to see reproductions in malls, not just because they don't want to see, say, for example, well, I don't really carry reproductions, so I can't really show you a good example on this table. I'm looking at the merchandise I have. But if somebody is looking for something as a serious collector and then it turns out, oh, it's a fake one, every good one in the mall starts to be suspicious to them. If you're an advanced collector, you might be able to tell, but if you're new to collecting Roseville and you see one piece and you're like, that doesn't seem quite right, now I'm suspicious of every single piece I see. It really hurts everyone's sales. So reproduction's bad. It is, and know your market. Yes, this is, I was just going to come to this. It's really important. Personally, I prefer malls that are in tourist locations that get a lot of traffic, because tourists are on vacation, they have mad money to spend. A lot of serious collectors are older people who have time to travel, and so they have an opportunity to go different places. And I find a good tourist location that gets steady traffic most of the year is a good place to be. On the other hand, I was in one mall that had a lot of local traffic because it was on a really busy main street where all the other big box stores were, and it did really well, but it sold completely different things. Resist, thank you, Teophane. Resist the temptation to try to sell broken stuff. I know that especially if you're a collector who's decided to sell, you think, well, I'll get rid of my chips and stuff and I'll keep the good stuff. I can tell you, I've been to a lot of dealer estate sales where the dealer is passed on and you go in the house and everything in the house is chipped and cracked and damaged because they knew that that wouldn't sell in the store, so they put their good stuff in the store and they kept their chipped and cracked at home. I do get exasperated with dealers who try to justify selling damaged items too. It's one thing if it's you know, if it's inexpensive and it's just for fun, or it really doesn't affect the performance. Like Sarah says, she doesn't mind broken stuff, but I've seen the stuff that she gets that's broken or a little damaged, and she's buying things that are really nice and might happen to have a little bit of a flaw. In all cases, so important to put on your tag as is, or as found, or specifically note chip on edge. Some people don't mind it if you are honest about it and they know to look for it. They may say, okay, that's great. But I just sent a plate to a collector I sold in a live sale, and she got it and I missed a chip, and she absolutely found it and sent me a picture and said, look, this has a chip on it, and you didn't represent it that way. And she was right, and I refunded her money immediately, because you just don't do that in this business. Ultimately, your reputation is what you have in this business. You'll sell the merchandise and then it's gone till you buy another piece, but your reputation stays with you. Little tiny things are not such a big deal. Again, just represent it on the tag if you're a new seller. The other thing I always tell newbies to antique malls is have the, and yes, do price it accordingly. Don't price it like it's perfect if it's not perfect. I mean, I immediately discount if it's a flea bite or a nick or even a little thing. I immediately figure 20% less than retail and down from there. And yes, I think this is so important. Think like a buyer, think like a collector. We have a lot of collectors here in the chat, and that's why I've been asking the people who are collectors to say what you look for when you go into a store, and put that in the chat, because you are the ultimate customer. The collectors are the reason that we're all here. We can talk a lot about how great it is to be a reseller, and I'm on YouTube, and I'm in a mall, and I do this and I do that. It's really awesome. Yes, it is. It only exists because people ultimately want to collect those items, and if you bring them what they want and it's in good condition and priced right, you will sell. I tell people, have the cheapest one, the best one, or the only one. So walk around the mall, especially if you're brand new. If you are a new dealer moving into a mall, take a look around and see what is in the mall, and then talk to the owner of the mall and find out, are these things in the mall because that's what's selling? Or are the things in the mall the things that haven't sold, and the things that are selling they're out of because they all sold? Because you don't want to go in and say, well, gosh, all these dealers have, they all have Fostoria glass. They all have cute character figures. They all have Fenton bells. I'll bring those in too. Well, then you're lost in the sea of everything else. You're not giving something new to a different collector, and you are basically just copying what you see around you. And it is much better to distinguish yourself and be the one that has the thing that everybody else doesn't have, and it gives you pricing power. And yes, I agree. An eBay completed sale might be helpful if it has information. I get really frustrated. I went to a community garage sale last year in Indiana. This guy had not completed sales, but eBay asking prices sheets. He had found the most expensive of each piece he had and stuck them on there, and then marked the stuff at the high eBay asking price because it was very special. And look, they get this for it on eBay. Well, no, they didn't get that for that. They asked that for it, and it was still sitting on eBay, and he sold none of that stuff, and I'm not surprised. Let's see. Yes. Yep. And a lot of times the ones that put the eBay tags on everything haven't really looked over their merchandise to see what their merchandise is. This is an interesting thing as well. Now, you have to remember, I even make mistakes, and people think, oh, well, George knows so much because he's an appraiser and he does this and that. And I do know a little bit about a lot of different things, but I make mistakes. I don't always get a pattern name right. I don't always know the new mold from the old mold. I have to research too all the time. It's a constant thing. And so, you know, if you are collecting something and it wasn't represented as not being vintage in the sale, and that's the problem. It should have been represented as being new. Now, possibly they didn't know, and that's where you kind of have to take a chance and arm yourself. And oh, you confronted them after and they admitted it. See, now that is just not right. They should give you your money back because they misrepresented the item. And I will tell you, at least in Washington state and I believe Florida, and I'm not sure about other states, that kind of misrepresentation is considered fraud, and you must give the customer their money back or you can get sued. So, don't take chances. If you're a dealer, honest representation means a lot. Another person said, asked, and it kind of was along these lines about pricing. I had another of our level 3 viewer, and here we go. And here's another reason you want to have the different thing. Here's Nate talking about, and he is a serious collector. He looked for the odd man out item. The seller had costume jewelry, and he ended up selling a Japanese Niello egg case for $5. And even with shipping to New Zealand, Nate, that is a great and amazing deal. So I don't blame you for picking that up. And that is a very good clue, by the way. And it's also the reason that when you're in a store, if it's possible, you would like to have things that everyone else doesn't have. Let's see here. That's why when I do live sales, I show every aspect and say if I don't know what something is. Yes, absolutely, that is what needs to happen. That is the only way that things work. Is just the way. Susan, I'm so sorry about that. I put out a notice. Usually we don't have so many people in the chat because this is usually member only, but just to let you know, Susan, please send me emails of suggestions that you have for future topics. If you folks who are level 3 members, I like this to be driven by you and your interest and what you're interested in knowing about. So that is the opportunity there. For you folks who are getting to join tonight because I couldn't get the thing to come up on the closed circuit, you are absolutely welcome to join us as a level 3 member where we can chat like this regularly. Like I said, we're probably going to make some revisions and possibly move this benefit over to the other channel because of the way the notifications work through YouTube. It's just really difficult. A lot of our level 3 members find out after we've had the chat that the chat happened because there's no notification system. It's just crazy. Now let's see here. Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad that we could actually. This is great. It's a nice big crowd, and these topics are all from level 3 members. And the next one was someone who has been a collector. And here we go. There's the pricing question. And yes, Corrine, I did. She had sent in this question, and I'm going to go ahead and address it now. And this kind of fits in a little bit with what Mary Lee is saying. What's the average length of time before a booth starts turning a profit? I'm only familiar with online selling. Well, this gets back to what Corrine asked me to address tonight, and that is, she said that she's buying neat things, and before she can process them, that the prices that they were selling for when she looked them up have fallen by 20 or 30%. Before she can even get the thing out to sell. And she's a fairly new real world seller and is having some struggles because of that. And I've met Corrine and she buys some really nice things. So I don't think the merchandise is the issue at all. I guess the first question I would ask is, first of all, as far as pricing, if the prices are falling that fast before you're able to process, what is your processing and what can be done to speed up the processing? One thing, if you're buying online for resale, is by the time you get it, well, the market may have changed. I heard someone earlier talking about Worth Point and how, Yvonne, Thrifty Rich, in our live sale we were doing a couple of hours ago, mentioned that, sometimes Worth Point has wrong information because they're just putting an eBay listing. And yeah, maybe the piece sold, but maybe the person sold it and the person who bought it and the person sold it did not realize what the item was and they got it completely wrong. I have seen that on Worth Point a bunch of times. So first of all, here we go. Yes, this is Joanne, who is a collector, and she's saying, as a collector, educate yourself, know what you're looking for, be able to spot a fake, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Where pricing is concerned, I guess the first question, Corrine, is how can you And here is, Susan has a great point here too. Buy low. Cost of goods killed me at first. It really is true. If I can't double my money minimum, even on a nice piece, I usually won't touch it. Now, if something is, $300 and it's going to sell for 500, and I feel confident that it's going to sell for 500, well, I might step up and pay 300 if I can turn it really quickly and make a nice sum of money. On the other hand, if I'm buying things that are cute, like like this little gal here, this will be in my live sale tomorrow. Sorry, I just shook everything. This little gal's going to be in my live sale tomorrow. Well, I paid I think I paid between $10 and $15 for this because I figure it's a $25 or $30 piece. On the other hand, the Joseph original here, these are selling for $15 to $18. I paid $1 at a garage sale for her. So it really does matter. Another thing is what Shayna is saying here. Each area of the country does have different ideas of collecting and what's collectible. So you may be buying something that's really great based on the fact that you saw that it sold on eBay, and it is really great. It's just that that client is not where you are in the real world, and that's why online selling is very helpful in that case. So that can have an effect as well. I would say if your processing time is long, like you're getting an item and it's taking you a month or two to get it out, the market absolutely can change in that amount of time. And you want to go and refresh your information and do your pricing at the very last so that you're pricing based on current information. Because on any given day, when I was writing the Treasure Craft book, I was looking at this one picture. I was following eBay for pricing so that I could put pricing in the book that was realistic. And this picture sold for $51 one day. It sold for $54 the next day. It sold for $157 the third day. And it sold for $52 the fourth day. And I thought, what? How did one of them sell for $100 more? Two people, I suppose. Somebody probably dropped and broke one and wanted to get a replacement and get it in the house. And two people were in that boat at the same time. So they bid those suckers way up. And then the next day, the same piece sold for $100 less. So it really helps if you can kind of look at your pricing over a length of time and not be just locked into one number you saw, thinking that that's where the number is. Let's see here. Here's an example. I waited too long to list some Celestial Libby mugs on eBay and the selling price totally dropped, so you need to be as fast as you can. Unfortunately, it really is true. The market, it used to be that we expected that, there'd be a new trend in collecting about every 6 months or a year, and a new group of people would get interested. Martha Stewart put out an article about jadeite glass, and all the new jadeite collectors poured in because of the article. Now, because of social media, trends can go like this, and this week, oh, everybody loves this color. Oh, wait, next week they don't. Oh, now we're really into, let's say this week we're really into Victorian graphics because we've decided that they're really cool and interesting and everyone should want this. And then the next week it's, oh, we're really into Art Deco graphics because it's modern. The thing is that the trendsetters have an interest in moving the market that way. And so markets change really fast now. It's gotten much more challenging. At the same time, as Willie Joe says, booth dealers can sell at a premium sometimes because the item is there and the buyer can hold it in their hands and walk out the door with it. And that is true. That is one of the reasons I have remained a real world seller and not just switched to everything online, because I really think that certain things do better in a real world setting. As far as things that can, and yes, Susan, it is true. We actually hold back some items if the market is flooded. That may also be a good idea. It may be good to wait to sell a certain thing, especially online, but even in a store. If you walk into a store and a great example. I found a Japanese ice crushing machine. I'd never seen one before, and then 3 weeks later I'm in another mall and there's another one for Japanese shaved ice. If I had bought the one and then walked into the mall with it thinking, I've got the only one, this is amazing, I have this big price, and then went, oh, there's another one, I'd feel a little sad. So Let's see here. Definitely also true, and it's nice to hear the collectors talk about this. Kristen is a big Blanco collector. I love the cat, by the way, in your little thing, and the genie bottle and everything else there. But yes, she says she will spend more in person because she's a glass collector. She wants to make sure everything is perfect, no stains, no chips, all that stuff. That's one reason that YouTube live sales are good, because at least you're seeing the item and the person's describing it to you. You're not left with just, there's a picture, do I buy it? Another thing that, as far as processing, how to speed it up, um, you might, if it's about tagging or research or that sort of thing, sometimes it just takes the time it takes. But if there's anything you can do, branded tagging is nice if you're new and selling, something with your business name. Maybe have a sign in the booth that goes with it. Start to create your brand. Bring in your brand from online if you do online, or establish your brand and then grow with it. But your price tags, you maybe be able to do something that's stock, where I have a template where all I have to do is put in the item and the price, and it makes the tag. I don't have to handwrite tags and handwrite descriptions and put the same branding and the same mall space and the same inventory number mark. It's just all there. So things that can help you process faster will help you with this issue. Um, there are other reasons that, again, what percentage of retail do you pay? I try to never pay more than half. Nurse Flipper says she pays about 10 cents on the dollar for what she sells. Now, she sells a lot of new and old things and buys a lot of auction lots, so she can get those prices. And here we go. Here's an example. I'm a collector and I'm interested in letting some collections go. Is it better to consign or have an in-home tag sale? Selling online seems so daunting by myself. I think it really depends on the amount that you're looking to get. If you're going to consign, the person you're consigning with, I take a little less because I'm just that way, but most people charge at least 40, 45, 50%. So you're going to want to know something about what they think they're going to get for that price at those levels. An in-home tag sale is an okay idea if you're okay with having people come into your house. The problem is it's not really controllable. You may want to consider Facebook Marketplace, where you can sell an item at a time or a collection of items and show them and then make appointments. That might be a way to make it viable. Interesting, Beth says, and I have noticed that some people too. I sold in a stuffed mall, so my booth sold better because it's sparse. I know we talked earlier about bring as much as you can, and I am one of those who overstuffs my booth. I have to be honest, I do it because I travel so much. I know it's not good merchandising. It's too much, and the display would do better and sell better, and probably items would be able to be visually separated more and people would spot them if I backed down about 20% on the amount of merchandise that I put in. So what I'm trying to do now is I fill the booth and then I take a little bit out. And the best thing to do is take the old stuff that's been there a while out, and then you'll have plenty of space. You can always bring it in again and it'll look fresh. Yes, let's talk about that, Susan. I absolutely have not forgotten about that. Another thing that I want to, let's see here. Sorry, I am, here we go. That's one of the things on live sales. This is smart. Ask a collector. What are you collecting? What are you noticing in your market? If you like art glass, for example, talk to art glass collectors about what they like and what they look for, and you can focus in a little bit more. Corinne, I know you also, as far as eBay pricing and the fact that prices are falling faster than you can get the items out, you may want to look again at eBay and see how thin is that market. If you're seeing a whole lot of sales results, well, there's a pretty active market. If you're seeing one, it may mean the piece is really hard to find, and the next time it might sell for even more. It also may mean that, it's a thin market and there's only so many collectors for that item. So it may not sell for as much. If say, for example, oh, well, here's one. Now, say this very pretty Venetian glass basket is for sale, and you've got the only one, and there's probably not another like it in the store. Well, then, or I mean, on eBay and that sort of thing. Well, then you probably have the market to yourself. Now, let's say this is really rare and it's a designer, and uh, that no one has seen this one before, and we found out it's signed Archimedes Seguso. Oh, we were going to pick that right up, and the person who loves it the most bids 500 for it. What did the next bidder pay? That's another thing to ask when you're looking at eBay. If it's something unusual, what did the second bidder pay? Because you are going to come up and put the same piece out, and you are now number two. You are not the first person to sell it, you are the second person. So you want to price based on the bid that failed, not the bid that won, because the second person wasn't willing to go that high. See the logic there? And I say that because I bought a wood sign at a sale, and the wooden sign turned out, it was from Showbiz Pizza Palace. It turned out to be worth $300 or $400. On eBay, it sold for, I think, $456 the first time. I put mine on eBay, I got $250. I was very happy with $250. The next person put theirs on eBay, they got $175. You see the progression. How serious is the collector who wants it the most? And then the market starts to work back. So, Karine, I would say, look a little deeper into those comparable sales as you're using those for your pricing. That may help you not get stung with things. Another thing I would say is where to sell. I know where you are. And I know that the place you sell in is it's a nice place, and they do very well with certain things. And the question is that going to sell in your market? Are you going to have to wait for a tourist to come in? The local trade is different than the tourist trade. This summer has been a little odd also. I'm trying to make sense. I want to I want to mention that for those of you who are just starting, if you're feeling a little discouraged or all of that, I've heard a lot of people saying that sales have been weaker on eBay, and sales have definitely been a little slower in the tourist locations because the price of gas was so high that the early summer tourists came, and then we didn't get the midsummer. Now the price of gas is down and people are taking weekend trips, and we're starting to see business actually pick up again in the tourist locations. So all of those things can have an effect. And for you who are online sellers, the other thing, again, where you sell will affect your pricing, just like it will in the real world. If you're selling on First Dibs or Cherish, okay, I had someone send in a really neat set of, it was a thing with a bunch of little mobiles. They were designed by a very well-known artist because he had put a huge installation in a mall in, I think, Minnesota, and they gave out these little packets with miniatures of them at the grand opening of the mall. Well, someone found those at an estate sale. None of us could find any comparables. I told them, based on what I had seen, that I thought it might sell for $150 or $200. Well, they went ahead and put it online, and it went for $650 because it was that hard to find. We just don't always know sometimes until we try something how it's going to go. Let's see here. What else were people asking about this time around? Oh, well, the other thing I wanted to talk about, and this kind of brings us to that point, was a lot of us, YouTube has been around for a long time, but this YouTube reseller community has probably been around a couple of years. I'm going to grab this question really quickly, though, first, and then I'll come back to this. I'm sorry, because this is a good question. Do you have a cutoff price for putting items in showcases? My general rule of thumb is if it's smaller than your fist and over $50, it better go in a showcase. Or if it's fragile, or that sort of thing. If it's under $50, then it's your discretion. Okay, so anyway, I'm sorry. Let's get back to upping your game a little bit. So I've had a couple of live sales the last couple of days, and I'll have another one tomorrow, and I've noticed a couple of interesting trends. People are really liking the fun, cute stuff that sells for $15 and $20, but if you have something really good, people are willing to step up for some good things. And so I'm seeing that the You know, I bought a piece with, let me go grab it. It'll just take a second. I hadn't really thought of using props tonight, so I wasn't prepared for this. So if you saw the sale I just did with Yvonne, we just sold this piece. This was a piece where I stepped up a little bit because I recognized that it was a very, very hard to find Fenton swung vase. It does glow under a black light. It looked fantastic. It looked great in the picture, and it sold for good money in a live sale because it was really unusual. And this is not something I would have thought to look at before YouTube and the interest in swung vases and uranium glass. I might not have noticed this piece, and I did notice it. And I was with Jocelyn from Crazy Lamp Lady and Drew, and I think I paid, I don't know, $40 or $50 for it. It ended up selling for 3 times that much, so I'm glad that I got it. I thought it was really cool. And that was an example of where I had the choice of that or a bunch of little crackle glass pitchers for $7 and $8 each, which would have sold for 15 or 20, which is very respectable and fine. But I decided on that piece instead. And so selling one item, I made as much money as if I had sold that whole pile of other items I was looking at. So as a collector, I have to say the same thing. My collection, as I go on, you know, I have limited space and I've got a lot of stuff around all the time because I'm a reseller. So if it's going into my collection, it's got to be a little better than the one that I had before or a little more special. And I think most collectors, that's what happens. You grow into your collecting, you find the thing you really like, and when you get on that roll, you start upgrading. Am I right? Collectors out there, tell me what you're doing and what you're looking for and how your collections have evolved. I'd be curious to see some of that in the chat. But I believe over the course of my collecting time, that's absolutely what I've done. It's what most people I know who collect do. They get started on something and they like it, and then they get more, and then they start finding out more about it. They do the deeper dive, they learn all about the stuff. And this is the other part of what I say, stepping up your game, whether you're a collector or a reseller. You know, it's really tempting. I've seen several comments here about, oh, I watch the live sales and the people are very sweet, but they don't know what they're selling and they don't give you any real information. And that is a problem. Again, it's that thing we talked about earlier about the live sales starting to cause this frenzy where you just, you know, can't stop and keep going. And that can happen. And what happens is you're in such a scramble. It's like, I've got to go find more merchandise. I've got to get the merchandise cleaned and listed and out there. And you never stop and actually do any more connoisseurship. Are you learning about the things you really like? Are you studying them? Do you have a nice collector's reference book? Are you in a collector group online? For those of you who are collectors or resellers looking for certain types of collectors, there are collector groups for a whole lot of different things. Rosie's Collectors Group is so strong now that all these people came to Marietta, Ohio, and we had a great time together. And they were very serious people, and they bought really great stuff because they are all advanced collectors. And this is the point, is that as you go on in this and you get more interested in your item as a collector or as a reseller, and you get more serious about what you're doing, look to find things that are another level. Whatever you like, start learning what is the very best, what is the very top of the market. Maybe I can't afford it, but if I know what it is, I can evaluate all these other things that are a little bit less and down the scale, and you will find yourself starting to look for things with better quality. You will find yourself looking at glass shoes and looking to see if they're smooth and fire polished or if they're all rough and nibbly and say made in Taiwan on the bottom. Because it makes a difference in price. It also makes a difference in collectability. I talk a lot about, oh, all that stuff seems to have gone into collections and in certain categories, and it's true because the collectors get serious and then they buy the very, very best ultimately. So I would say that my biggest advice to anybody is to please And yes, we are bringing it on tomorrow, by the way. I will mention this as a programming note. 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, we will be having a Fenton Convention reunion and wrap up and a live sale. And we've got some really great stuff that we couldn't put on the live sales because there's only so many hours in the day. So we'll have some great stuff tomorrow there. And you can access that through this channel, or you can go to Rosie's Auction House. She is the host, and I am going to guest with her, and we're going to have a great time. But anyway, what I was saying is about the other topic is, here we go. This is it. I've learned not to buy every piece that I see for what I collect. I have learned to be choosy. That's absolutely true. And I can tell by the things in your avatar, which I wish I could blow up because you've got wonderful stuff. Well, let's take a look at that. So this little cat vase by Blanco there, I think that's about a $450 or $500 piece. The large tangerine genie bottle there is about $300 or $350. You know, again, it depends on the item. Now, now Blanco made lots of stuff that you can buy for $15 and $20, and you're going to see a whole lot of it. And it's great, and it's pretty, and it's fun. If you like it for your house, buy it. If you like it for your collection, buy it. If you like it to resell, buy it. Just know that there's various levels to the market, and I will be honest with you, there's a lot of talk about, are we going to have a recession, are we not? It's up in the air. It may not really affect any of us all that much. Inflation has typically been good for antiques and vintage. You know, we may be in the right place for this. The point, though, is people with money and people with passion spend their money where their passion is. So if someone's really passionate about something, I had a guy who was close to homeless. I mean, he had a apartment that he could barely keep, but he just loved sunglasses, and I would always feel bad when he would come into our mall and buy them, but it's what he really had the passion for, and he would save the little extra money he had to buy really good sunglasses. Well, thankfully, eBay came along. He was able to sell some, and he was actually able to get out of his predicament and get ahead a little bit in life, and that was good. Let's see here. This is a good point. Traveler says, it's been hard to find good pieces for my collection as I collect a specific category. And I do understand. And I know some of the things that you collect. I don't know all of them. I've sold you a few things. I have some idea of what you like. And there are certain categories that are hard to find, or hard to find because, you know, certain things that people collect are not politically correct anymore. For example, like I showed you earlier, this little bisque knotter. One of the reasons I'm going to put it in a live sale is I recently put a Gold Dust Twins package on eBay, and it was booted off as a for harboring stereotypes, which, you know, they're pretty abstract, they're pretty vague. But it was a Gold Dust Twins thing. It was made during Jim Crow, you know, so someone could get offended. I know eBay has to, you know, be careful about things like that. This little guy is not that way. But can I sell him online, or do I need to find someone who is the specific collector of this sort of thing and sell directly to them? That's why I do a lot of shows. There are certain things that are just hard to sell elsewhere. This is a great point too. Keep up with your buyers. I have great friends who started as customers. That's absolutely true. So many people in my world are people that I met because they, well, Joanne Gibson, we went to dinner the last time I was in St. Pete. She's in the chat here, and she's a great guy, a great gal. And she brought Creston, who's a great guy, with her, and we had a really wonderful time. We'd never met we'd met at an estate sale I conducted, but we'd never sat down and gotten to talk, and we got along really well, and it was so much fun, and I'm looking forward to the next time. You know, we've got things in common. That's why we're here. That's why it's so great being online with this community, is the same feeling. Yes, and you want some friends who are into this stuff, because otherwise people think you're crazy because you're buying and selling a bunch of junk to them. I'm going to get together with a friend of mine from high school, and we're going to stop and do some filming along the way. We're going to go see some historic sites he wants to see, but we're taking a little trip. And he's like, oh, antique stores, there's too much glass, there's too much little stuff, I don't know where to look. You know, he's not a collector, he doesn't get it. So have some collector friends. At least they'll appreciate you. I am looking forward to meeting you too, Susan. We will at some point. I guess that what I'm going to say at this point is, again, I'm looking at myself and my own situation, and I'm looking at a lot of collectors who've been doing this a little while now. I'm seeing what people are buying and selling on live sales on YouTube is getting better. And I think that reflects the fact that we all learn a little bit more, and we do improve our game as we go. So that is my advice to all of you is keep having fun, keep loving what you're doing, keep enjoying what you collect or what you buy to resell. But keep on learning, keep on looking for more, keep on striving to find out more information, to look for better items, to find out what the better items in your category are. You know, you might not want to pay a first dibs or a cherished price, but it's a fun place to look and find out about a bunch of really amazing stuff. And you might just find something when you're out there that matches that, that's not at a first dibs price. Um, and yes, I agree. I think all information is good information. And I thank you very much. I'm glad to be able to teach some and to learn back. I never thought of myself as someone who would end up wanting to try to educate people, but then I looked one day and thought, oh my gosh, I've learned some things. I'd like to share this, and it's turned out to be great. With that in mind, it's about 5 minutes till the hour, so I'm going to throw this open to any general questions and try to answer any questions for your folks, and then we'll sign off for now, and we will be in touch with all of you folks about the level 3 and how we're going to do this in the future. But we're glad we got to have some extra people in tonight. Let's take a look and see. Are resellers getting ready for Christmas sales now? I am. Unlike a lot of people, I don't do a Christmas in July sale because I don't find enough truly vintage Christmas throughout the year to be able to do a Christmas in July sale. I save mine up and I put it out, and I am very old-fashioned. I love Thanksgiving. It's probably my favorite holiday because it's about gratitude and togetherness and being thankful for things instead of just being about stuff, because I do stuff all the time. And so I wait until right after Thanksgiving and then I go put my displays up because that's old school, but it's the way I am. Although I'm sure if you go to Home Depot, probably next week they'll be putting Christmas stuff out because it is August after all. And yeah, you know, in some respects I agree with that. And yes, this has been fun. Thank you very much. And let me see. Oh, what is my holy grail? You know, someone else, another level 3 member asked that. My holy grail changes as a reseller. I have things on my bucket list like, ooh, I've never had one of those before. So, you know, now the Japanese shaved ice machine is on my bucket list because I've seen a few. I'd like to sell a vintage surfboard. You know, there's things like that. For me personally, to be honest with you, there is a treasure craft, a very rare black glazed tiki that was made as an experimental sample in Hawaii. They came in a few small sizes, and I found one in a bigger size, and I'll be darned if I didn't break the thing. So that has sat with me ever since. So if you see a large black ceramic marked Treasure Craft on the back, Treasure Craft of Hawaii, tiki, I am your man. I will pay, well, a whole lot. We'll just put it like that. And thank you. I have really enjoyed this too. And yes, I see we're listing Christmas, Halloween, and Thanksgiving. I was in a mall with a guy who had collected Christmas for years, and he had a Christmas display up year-round, and he sold well year-round. If you had enough, you could do it. A purpose-driven life. Well, thank you. You know, I believe that life is just, you know, maybe life is just here for us to experience and to develop ourselves and nurture others and all that other stuff. But to me, I like having a purpose behind it. A purpose helps me organize my thoughts. It helps me feel like I'm getting somewhere. I'm a big believer in it. And yes, thank you. I would love first dibs. Let's see here. Someone will find it for me. I hope so. I sure do. I had it and I lost it, and that was tough. And yes, please, Bolo. Let me see if there's any other questions. Oh, Leah, thank you. I would love to go to lunch with you, and I'll probably get down there in the fall. Let me see if there's any other questions here that I should try to answer. Okay, here we go. What's your opinion on being a vendor at markets and flea markets versus an antique booth? I think there's a place for both. I think it really depends on what kind of a dealer you are. A lot of dealers don't mind to do an antique booth because they can visit it once a month. They can set it up, and it's a lot of effort to set up the first time, but then they don't have to worry about it. If they're also selling online, they can take all of their stuff that is maybe not appropriate to sell online or hard to ship, and they can put it in their antique booth. They can tailor for the local market. The markets and flea markets are great too, or can be, but they vary. A flea market can be something where you roll up and rent a parking space in a parking lot for $20 and throw your stuff out and sell what you can and go home. A flea market can also be almost like an antique show and be a $150 space and a multi-day affair. I love doing the shows. I want so much for other dealers to do the shows. I can't tell you that everybody should do the shows because it is physical work. If you're going to go to a flea market to sell, you're going to get up in the morning, you're going to set all your stuff up, you're going to sell it, and you're going to turn around and go home. The good thing is you're right there, you can negotiate, you get to meet the people, that's really fun. On the other hand, you also have to sit there the whole time. What if it's hot and by 10 o'clock there's nobody there? Oh, but we're here till 2. Well, you're just going to sit in the sun for a long time and then get to take everything down. I personally don't dig one day of events because it's a lot of work to set up. So to turn around and have to pack it all back in and take it home to me is hard. So I look for multi-day shows typically, or I look for real world locations that are permanent, or I go online. Let's see if there's anything else really quickly. I think that, and yes, absolutely, definitely looking forward to Springfield. Any of you folks who can get there, it's a huge show. It's really fun, and I will be in booth 301. I would love to see you. And travelers thinking about going, that would be great. Let's see here. I know you did Whatnot. Okay. I did Whatnot early on. I still think Whatnot is a viable and growing and potentially opportunity for a lot of us resellers. I actually backed off from doing it when they got rid of the dollar shipping because to me that was the really big advantage that it had for my customers over other sources and places that I can sell. And also, I like doing the lives where you can actually see me. And now you can do that on Whatnot. At first, they wanted it all to be like you sit behind and put the thing in front of the camera and they never see you and there was no personal connection. I didn't really like that all that well. So now they've solved that. So, I think Whatnot will grow. To me, it still seems like there is an estate sale and a reseller community and people looking. Honestly, I think that's because they got a whole bunch of us YouTubers to bring folks over to them for that. And that's great if it helps build that. But there is a question at a certain point of how many platforms can one person sell on. And for me with Whatnot, the time I saved in terms of the easy invoicing was time that I gave up in terms of what I got for the items. I just didn't get as much for the items as I would have in another location. And I found that, for me, I would like to go back and try doing the things where their market seems to be strongest, which seems to be actually more male oriented, and there's not a lot of places to sell to men, and a younger audience. So I have a feeling that that's the thing, and I agree. I like the personal connection. So yes, it can be daunting. So many platforms, so very, very many. There's starting to be more and more and more. I've never done Etsy. I still think that Etsy is a place that it seems like is more about presentation and storytelling. So if you're good at styling or you have things that are pretty and would do well in that venue, that might be a great place for you. I haven't done it because I don't know where I'll find the time to learn to do one more thing and sell in another location. I don't do Mercari. I don't do Poshmark because I did not have a good experience as a customer buying from them. So, there is the stuff. That is the thing. And I don't know that I have, and here we go. And here's this. Some people really don't like the ID thing for registration. They have a good reason for doing it in terms of a logistical thing. They have to know you're a real person. It is a turnoff for some people, and I get that. And those people will not shop there because they don't want to share their personal information in that way. Is there much of an audience for true antiques now? Thank you. Hello, it's good to see you. I'm glad you're in the chat, and that is a great question I want to address before we go. True antiques are anything over 100 years old. We are starting to get into a time where that means more machine production items and not handmade things anymore. And so the craftsmanship is different. I have heard there is another appraiser on, well, I'll just say Dr. Lori loves to talk about it's 100 years old, it's an antique, and now that means everyone's going to want it. And I have to be honest, I disagree with that. The arts and crafts the arts and crafts era collecting was really strong in the 1990s when those items were 80 to 90 years old, and it actually fell when they turned 100 because the market, just like modernism now, everything got really expensive if it was good, and not that many people could afford it anymore, and they started looking for other things. And that gets back to your question, which is there a market for true antiques and what age group? I see a market. A lot of my elderly collectors, of course, are still looking for true antiques because that's what they've always collected. I am seeing a market with millennials for Victorian, and that is a wonderful and surprising thing to me. I sold a very nice cherub Victorian art glass vase on my live sale yesterday, in fact, and it was a hit, and I was really pleased. And it was it looked like, I only could tell from a picture. I didn't ask her age, but she looked like she was maybe 40. And the truth of the matter is that we're seeing younger people getting interested because they have grown up in a world of modernism. Every generation wants to kind of distinguish itself. They've grown up in a world where everything is either modernist or based on modernism. Everything is IKEA. It's very boxy. It's very plain. It's kind of austere. And now they want something different. And what's different to them is something fancy. And they are looking at Victorian. And that is really exciting to me. I'm seeing people like Danny, the niche lady, saying, I like early American press glass, and I'm going to start looking for it and collecting it. And I actually sold her a piece and sent it to her. And I bought it knowing that she was my customer. I just thought she's going to like this, and she did. And so I do see a developing market for true antiques. The big question is whether that market will develop fast enough for the prices to not continue to fall. The true antiques have really decreased in value. They were really at a peak when I was first in the business. Something over 100 years old was really, Victorian was where it's at. Well, times have changed. People had trouble getting more of it. The good examples went to collections. Well, at some point, those things are going to come out of collections, and then we're going to see a change. And I think that we will see more interest in Victorian because some of these things that people are really hot on, if they could find these items, were done in the Victorian era. Fairy lamps were a huge thing in England in the 1880s and 90s. And when I started in the business, fairy lamps were a huge collectible. Victorian fairy lamps were selling for $300 and $400 and $500 and selling out. And then they were all gone. And then I didn't see any for probably the next decade. All I saw were new fairy lamps at the time by Fenton, and now they're out of business. And now those fairy lamps are selling for $200 and $300 and $400 in some cases if they're scarce or unusual patterns. So those things, there are echoes, and I do think that Victorian right now appeals to an old age group and a young age group, and that is a good thing because the old folks will have somewhere to pass on the stuff that they love. And here's a good example here. My 22-year-old wants my mother's Baker traditional furniture that doesn't have a lot of reselling value at the moment. Exactly, because it's fresh to them. Um, Vintage Obsessions is about a young woman who is about 19 who is into this stuff. So I do think that there's hope and interest in the traditional antiques coming back. Um, I did see a question about bridge pieces. I don't really know the answer, so I'm going to pass that. Um, if I and here's a good example too. Bridgerton. Bridgerton has had a big effect. There's been a lot of interest in formal gowns and Regency and things from that era because of that show. Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Wildlife. You've tried over and over to ask me this. I am looking for a treasure craft black tiki god black glaze ceramic, and it will say treasure craft on the back, treasure craft of Hawaii. And one last question I'll do real quickly here. Diana asks, because this does happen, what happens if pieces get damaged or stolen in a booth or at a show? It does happen. It doesn't happen often. I have to say it happens a lot less nowadays than it used to, which is good, because there was a time when the antique market was so strong that people would come to steal because they could fence the things. Nowadays, that seems like it's less. Common thieves have kind of given up on that and moved to electronics because they're easy to fence. So we don't have that much of a problem anymore with that kind of theft. Usually, unfortunately, if it's theft, sometimes it's other dealers. Usually it's an opportunistic customer. I have it happen so rarely. In the last year, I've lost exactly one piece, and I think it was a $20 item. And I think I even know who did it, and I will say something if I see them again. Breakage, it happens too. We had a bad storm at Springfield, Ohio in the spring, and my tent turned inside out and some things fell, and I lost about $150 worth of stuff. But the show ended up really good, and I wrote it off. And yeah, you can take it as a tax write-off, or you write it against your profit is what you do. Because it is a loss. So keep your receipts and make sure you know what you paid for the stuff, because if something does get broken, you are entitled to write off what you paid for it. And you're saying you're having a terrible time with thievery. I do have a suggestion about this, and this kind of dovetails into the newbie question. Thievery is an issue in some booths more than others. I have a booth in a mall that was having a lot of problems because it was in the far corner of the mall. I talked to the mall owner. For $15, we put up a dummy camera. Everybody thinks that it's a real camera looking at them, and the theft stopped completely. So you might consider something like that. Sometimes cheap and easy solutions are the solution. The other thing I would say, though, is if you're having a lot of pieces taken each month, and this gets into I'm going into a new mall or I want to be a reseller in the real world, go into the place before you rent a booth and see what they do. Do they walk around and help the customers? Do they greet the customers when they come in the door? Shoplifters who have been interviewed said over and over, if somebody says hello to me within the first 30 seconds, I turn around and leave because it's so easy to find a place where they'll ignore me. If the person running the mall is on eBay, typing away, looking at the computer, and the person comes in the door and they're like, eh, and that's the greeting, that's a place that's going to have theft. And that might not be a place you want to be a dealer. So that is my suggestion about theft. Oh yes, distraction robbery. Yeah, that's a thing too. That's especially with jewelry. For those of you folks who sell jewelry, it can happen with costume, but it's more fine jewelry. Show one piece at a time. Do not let them have more than one. If they ask for more than one, just say, oh, I'm really sorry, I can only do one at a time. And they'll like it or they won't, because we had a situation in a mall where two women came in wearing very nice looking Avon rings. And, oh, I want to try that one. Well, I want to try that one. And the person gave the one, gave the other another. And they're like, oh, well, what do you think of this one? And they're passing them back and forth. And then they ended up handing back 2 Avon rings to the staff member and wearing the 2 diamond rings out the door. So that's the kind of thing that you really want. That's why just have rules. Remember, you are in control. If it's your booth, it is like a store. You can ask people to leave. You can tell them not to touch things. You can, but the best thing that I find is, rather than start with the negative, is start with the positive, which is, let me know if I can help you. because right away they know who you are, they know that you're interested in helping them, you're not down their throat trying to push something on them, but they also know you noticed who they are, and that all really matters. And Traveler says that he stopped putting small expensive items and is only putting larger expensive items. You know, you might need to put a showcase in a booth too if you have small ones. So that is, yeah, it's relentless. It can be really hard. Some locations are tough. When you're in a location, again, this is why I like tourist locations. They tend to be, you know, people tend to be a little bit better. If you're in a place where the general public just comes in all the time, you're not so sure whether you're dealing with a collector, a gift buyer, an enthusiast, or somebody who just drifted in. Yes, I did this once too. I was talking to a dealer at a show. I had a piece of pottery in my hand, and someone said, "Oh, someone needs you in your booth." And I said, "Oh," and I turned and ran off. And the woman's like, "Hey, come back, come back." And then I realized I had the piece of pottery in the hand, and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I turned around and I gave her the. Honestly, I didn't even want to buy it, but I felt so bad that I gave her the money and took it and went back to my booth, and ended up with a $24 piece of pottery that I sold for $20 later, and thought, that's fine. It was just embarrassing, and I didn't mean to do it. You know, it's just easy to get distracted, and when you're at a show, you're in a huge building, and you're like, oh yeah, well, we're all sort of in the same space. So it does happen. I have sold at Renegers. I will be back there in November, and I'm looking forward to it. As much as I am loving this, it is a quarter after the hour. We've had a great chat. I'm glad we got to share this with so many people. For those of you who would like to do this in the future, currently this is a level 3 member benefit, and you are welcome to take a look at the information in the description of any of my videos that'll talk about membership and how you can get it and the various perks for different levels. And like I said, we may do some adjustment and move the extra part that makes you level 3 over to the other channel because it may be easier to deal with it on the live channel. Like you saw tonight, I had a lot of problems getting this launched, and there are certain things about YouTube and the way that they just won't let us notify people, the members, in advance. It's like the notification comes on when the show starts, and so people don't get to know. So we're going to figure it out. But in the meantime, thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody for showing up. I appreciate all of you for chatting. I appreciate the level 3 members very much for your topics and your contributions. Please email me some more. You know how to reach me, and I will look forward to those, and we will talk again next month. And thank you all so much. Just a programming note, I will be back on tomorrow morning at noon Eastern with a back to school live sale. We have some old vintage schoolhouse related items and kids stuff and other stuff for grown-ups too. It's a big mix, so we'll have fun then. And then at 8 p.m. Eastern, I will be with Rosie. I'm still calling her Rosie. I mean, Heidi and I spent a whole week together, and I still can't stop calling her Rosie because her site is Rosie's Auction House, but her name is Heidi. She's a wonderful lady. We had a great time at the Fenton Convention, and we are going to talk about that and have a little reunion tomorrow. It'll be simulcast on her channel and my channel, so you can go to the Antique Nomad. I think it's the regular channel, or maybe it's the live. If you're not sure, just go to Rosie's. Oh, it's the Antique Nomad live. It'll be simulcast there and at Rosie's Auction House, so you can catch it on either of those channels. And we will be having a live sale of some really good Fenton pieces that we didn't get to put on a live sale during the convention. So, and the same to you, and the same to all of you. Much love and blessings, and thank you so much for being here. I really have enjoyed doing this with you, and I look forward to talking to you all again soon. And for now, good night and best wishes.